Today I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about how to configure your GSI AMTAS Pro before you actually run any evaluations. So we're starting all the way on the desktop. When you install GSI AMTAS Pro, you will have two icons that appear. One of them will be the application itself. It has our picture of little AMTAS Sam right there. The other one is the AMTAS Pro configuration application, and it is a gear icon, which indicates that it's going to be full of settings that you can decide. So to open that, you just double click. And when it is open, you will see that there are a number of different options that you can select from to determine how the test is actually going to run. So here we have the GSI AMTAS Pro configuration application, and there are a couple of different items that I would like to just point out. Number one, across the top, these are just some overall configuration items, as well as an indicating button that you can start the test from here. We'll go over each of those in a moment. And then also here on the left side of the main part of the config app, you have the different options or different sections that you will just sort of walk through and configure the way you want your test to work. So if we look at the upper left, let's just start here for a moment. The first item that you have over here on the upper left is volume. And this is a volume adjustment that is for the video, the instructional video. And so what I'd like to just point out is when you're using AMTAS Pro, it is using the transducers from the audiometer that you're connected to generate the tones, but it's using these wave files to generate the actual instructional video. And so this is a point where you can actually set that level. And so you would just follow these on-screen instructions and adjust the VU meter so that you're sure that the sound that's coming out of your PC program and going into the audiometer are going to be loud enough for the patient to hear. Again, I would like to repeat, this has no bearing on the actual tones that are presented as stimuli. This is just for the instructional videos. So when you're done with that, you can close it. Another feature up here we have is the licensing, and so this tells you what your hardware is licensed for. If you have additional things, like for example, if you decide you want to get a room noise monitor, you can purchase that, and the calibration will come on a USB, and you can import that license there. Same with calibration. We have some calibration options here for the microphones, the sound cards, and it shows your calibration information. And then, of course, we have the about information that gives you just the version number of the application. So let's get into the meat of actually configuring your evaluation. So the first place here on this left-hand side is just reports. And what happens is when you have a patient complete the AMTAS evaluation, the reports are all going to be dumped into this section of the config app. And you can see that we have a legend. There are several different kinds of reports, and you're able to really sort of filter these by the audiologist report, the patient report, and it just sort of makes it a little easier to navigate and to look through. The other thing that I'd like to point out is that we do have some information on, the test time and things like that are available when the report is generated. So this is sort of where the holding tank is after. If you go down to the general options, it's nice because you have a lot of different things that you can select to make it more comfortable for you, for the patient. You can make it a little bit more personal for your office. So you just have some display options. So your display language you can select. We do have 24 different languages that are available, but this is the one that is your default language. On the welcome screen, when we start the test, you can have the option to show the menu or not. And then you also can set up different languages that you would like to offer for your patient population. And I think that this is a really cool, just a cool feature so that you can actually really meet the needs of your population. You can see here on the left side when I click setup, I have all of the different available languages. And what I've done is I've taken a couple of the ones that are most common in my particular area, and I've made those my selected languages. So when I save that and then I start the test, I'm able to actually go in before the test starts, select a language that is other than my default language. It will run the test in that language, and then at the completion of that test, it will return to my default, which is English. You can add a report logo, and then you can also turn on extended logging. So if there does become an issue, then it will just have more information for the R&D staff at Grason-Stadler to do troubleshooting. So those are just some general options there. Now, I like to spend just a tiny bit of time in workflow because this is where you decide what happens before the test, during the test, and after the test. So let's take a look at those 3 sections. So before the test, you have the option to display a consent form. So you can generate your own, or we have a predefined one that just basically says, hey, you're doing a hearing test and you consent to that, and then whatever other language you'd like. You also have the patient information screen. So if you are requiring demographics at the beginning of the evaluation, then you would want to display the screen. If you're not requiring demographics, then it's not necessary to display. Headphone check is one thing that I would definitely recommend every time for every AMTAS user in the actual world, because this gives you an opportunity to ensure that the headphones are on properly, and it also gives the patient an opportunity to interact with the touchscreen. So if they're not as comfortable using this technology, then they start practicing before the actual test begins. And then finally, before the test, you can determine how you want your instructions. The video is available in English and I believe Spanish also. If you've chosen a language that is not dubbed over or subtitled on the video, it will automatically change to text if you change your language, or you can have no instructions, which I would not recommend. The video is pretty nice. The test options are what happen during the test, and so you can choose diagnostic or you can choose screening. Now, screening is a very, very basic test that is just basically one presentation at a defined level. This is not where the magic of AMTAS occurs. So what we're going to do is select diagnostic, and now you can choose from air conduction, bone conduction, and speech on the AMTAS Pro. And so I'm going to just select all 3 of those because I'm getting a comprehensive evaluation. And then the other option that you have is to use noise monitoring. Now, this just depends sort of on your setup. There are times when you have AMTAS Pro that's not inside of a booth, but you're confident in the quiet room scenario that you have. And there are other times when you just want that added comfort of knowing that the background noise is being monitored, and you will have a noise report generated that you can use to supplement your audiometric findings. So this is an option here in the test options. And then you have the after the test options. So when it's done, when it's all over, what do you want to happen? Well, I think you definitely want a report because you're going to need to look at that data to make your next decision. And then you can do things like set up a special place for it to go, or you can just look at it inside the config app like this. You could actually, if you'd like to, display the report for the patient. But remember, they're doing a lot of this independently. And so I don't know if displaying the report is something that is within your workflow or your strategy for this automated testing. But you do have the option to display the report. You can export the data, you can upload to GSI Cloud, or you can just return to the welcome screen. And so what I've done is I've selected generate the report. I do want to be able to export the data, and I want to return to the welcome screen. So after you have done your report, you've looked at your report section, you've looked at your general options and selected those, and you've selected your workflow, the next several items are just picking what you want to be required and how you want it to interact. So demographics, for example, what things do you want required from the patient? First name, last name, and then what things do you want to include on the report? They're separate, so you do have to select them in both columns there. For noise monitoring, again, this is one if you have decided that you're going to use room noise monitoring, you would make sure that the license is in, the calibration is in, and then you can select your maximum permissible background noise levels. So we have in here built-in OSHA standards, ANSI standards, and if you'd like to, you can make your own custom standards. Most of the time when we're doing threshold evaluations in quiet room, we're going to use the ANSI standards, and these are the ones that are adjusted for the circumaural headphones. It's also possible to do a noise check of the room before you start, just to make sure that your noise is within those maximum permissible background noise levels. For screening, the screening evaluation, if this is what you've chosen to do, this is where you just select the test frequencies, you select the intensity, and you select your pass criteria. Very general. The next one that we go to is the airborne diagnostic. And now this one is, again, another time that you're going to want to spend a little bit of thinking about how you want your patient to interact with AMTAS. So we do have the bone conduction octave frequencies, and when you select bone conduction, they are all selected. So you're going to be testing 5, 1, 2, and 4. You can also select 250 if you would like. It does not come checked standard, and it doesn't, either way that you want to do it is fine. For the air conduction frequencies, you can see here we have a lot of different options. We have the standard 500 through 8,000. Those correlate directly with the bone frequencies, and you cannot remove them. If you're doing all these bone octaves, you will be doing all of the air conductive octaves as well. Except for 250, you can choose to deselect or select those. You can also decide if you want to do the inner octaves. So do you want to do 3,000 and 6,000 or 750? I mean, you can choose the ones that you want. And with AMTAS Pro now, you are able to do extended high frequencies. So you are able to actually select those ultra highs, and it will do a walkthrough of obtaining thresholds for those high frequencies as well. Just a side note, the high frequency evaluation is separate than the standard frequency evaluation. So what will happen is the patient will go through the test, and it will be doing air conduction, pure tones, they're pushing yes or no, they're going through the evaluation. It'll get to about 80, 85%. And when it's done and it's ready to move on to the high frequencies, the progress bar will actually jump back to about 16%, and it's like it starts over. But it's really starting over because you've selected to do another separate air conduction test. So that's just something to keep in mind when you are selecting your test frequencies. Every frequency in AMTAS is masked, and if you decide, you can disable the masking. That is something that I would not recommend, just because if you do have to, do some masking, then it will surprise the patient. So don't disable masking, leave it on. And then the other option here is interoctave frequencies will be tested if the difference between two adjacent octaves is greater than 20 dB. And that is like the audiologist's general rule of thumb. If there's a big difference between the octaves, we definitely want to test the interoctave. But if you've already selected interoctaves and you select this, they override one another. And so what will happen is if you select this as the same time as 3 and 6, then 3 and 6 will not be tested unless there's a difference. So I usually leave that one undone because I would like to do 3,000 and 6,000 with every patient. And then the last thing I want to mention on this particular screen is this force adjustment for the forehead bone conduction. When we are using the forehead placement, there is a force adjustment made so that we can determine that the 4,000 hertz thresholds are not falsely altered by the placement of the forehead bone. And then finally, we have the speech diagnostic place that you go and select which speech test you're going to do. So we have the SRT that you can do in both right ear and left ear. And then we have word recognition. Now, word recognition is one thing that we want to just cover for a small minute here. When you're doing word recognition in the AMTAS environment, it is a forced choice task. And so what that means is the software is going to say, listen for the word, and then it's going to display 4 words from which to choose. And these words, one of them is your target word, and the other 3 are rhyming words. And what was found in research is that if it was done at MCL or 40 dB above sensation level, that it was a task that was too easy and everyone was getting 100%. So it wasn't a really good representation of how patients are doing in the real world with speech discrimination. So what was found is if we can do it at a much softer level, then it gives us a more real world reaction or result. So what we do is we use the either SRT or the pure tone average as a reference point for the starting level of the word recognition. On standard, it comes as the pure tone average as the reference point. And so what will happen is once we have established the thresholds and the SRT, the word recognition will be presented at 22 decibels louder than the pure tone average. The patient will do their words, which will be a list of 25 NU6s. And when they're done, if they get 88% correct, that is considered excellent and the test is over. If they do not get 88% on their word recognition, then the software will turn up the intensity by 8 decibels. So now we're 30 decibels above the pure tone average, and it will present another word list. And so what we're looking for here is not the same as when we're doing a closed set at MCL. What we're looking for here is a whole different thing. So we're looking at how do they do with word recognition in a pretty soft scenario. And if they don't do great, do they do better if we turn it up? So we're actually looking for a PI/PB increase as you increase the volume. So there are papers about that as well. If you would like to look at those references, we can certainly get them for you. So then, once you're ready and you have gone through the entire configuration application, you can either start the test from here, or you can select the icon on your desktop. I'm going to just start the test from here to show you a couple more things about the AMTAS software. Remember when I went into the configuration application, I clicked on the icon that was actually on my desktop. If I want to make a change just for one patient, so say for example, this person comes in and I've decided that I want to make a change, I can go to the hamburger icon and click settings, and it's going to pull up something that is very similar to the configuration application that I was just looking at. Except for now, I just wanted to maybe not do bone conduction because this is just a follow-up from last year. They've never had a conductive issue. It's a pure sensory neural. And so I can change this setting from the hamburger icon for this test only. And then I can go ahead and start the test and I'm right back to where I started. The other thing I wanted to point out about this particular screen is down here on the lower left, this is where my languages are. And so if I wanted to select a different language for this particular test, I would select that, and you can see that now my options have turned into a different a language other than English. And so then I would just go ahead and start the test, and when the test completed and I started the next test, everything would go back to the defaults that were set up in my configuration application. So that is the general rundown of how we are doing our configuration for AMTAS Pro. If you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to check the Grason-Stadler website or reach out to Grason-Stadler Audiology. Have a great day. Thank you.